What is going on, guys? So Super Bowl 59 is officially over. The Eagles just completely whooped the Chiefs up and down the field. Did not see that coming, but at the same time, not super surprised by it. The Eagles' defensive line was just ferocious. So with that said, the Jaguars are now on the clock to win Super Bowl 60. Okay, so with this video, it's going to be a full comprehensive breakdown of really how I would attack this offseason. We'll kind of take a look at the Jaguars roster and figure out exactly how to get it better through free agency and the NFL draft. Let's get it. Wanted to give a big shout out to this video's sponsor, BetUS. And did you guys know that BetUS actually has a casino? For all of my followers who are like live slots or live casino dealers, take advantage of BetUS's amazing sign-up bonus. It's a 200% sign-up bonus up to $5,000 and also a 250% sign-up using crypto. So huge shout out to BetUS. Thank you guys for coming over here and sponsoring this channel and these Jacksonville Jaguars. So with that said, let's go ahead and get to the content of this video. So let's go ahead and do a roster breakdown, really identifying what the Jaguars have and maybe what they need. So right now, Jaguars have their quarterback 1, but they don't have a quarterback 2. CJ Beathard and Mac Jones are officially free agents, so quarterback 2 will definitely be something the Jaguars need to attack. Running back, I feel like Tank Bigsby and ETN are solid, but man, it really feels like the Jaguars need a home run hitter. And you know, Tank Bigsby, when ETN was out, Tank Bigsby never really grasped a hold of that RB1 role. Never really made it to where it was going to be hard to give ETN carries. And, you know, he's had his flashes, but I'm not sure if he'll ever really be the elite running back that maybe Liam Cohen is going to want. Wide receiver. So Jaguars have Brian Thomas Jr. and Kirk Ingram and Parker Washington. So really, Brian Thomas Jr. is great, but 3 out of the 4 best Jaguars patch catchers are from the interior. The second best outside wide receiver is Gabe Davis, which they might look to really bring in another outside guy that can really rival what Brian Thomas Jr. is doing and really open up the field for Brian Thomas Jr. Tight end, you know, the Jaguars have Ingram and Strange, both I think good tight ends. Luke Farrell is a free agent, so maybe the Jaguars look to re-sign Farrell to a cheap deal, or maybe they try to, you know, go out and maybe invest in a 3rd or 4th tight end. Offensive line, the Jaguars tackle spots are set. Right tackle Anton Harrison and left tackle Walker Little. I know a lot of people have their reservations about Walker Little, but I kind of like Walker Little, and I think that it's right that he actually gets a full season of where he's expected to be the starter, and he kind of stays in that role, because ever since the Jaguars drafted him, they've been, you know, trying to put him put in the right tackle competition. Then playing him at left guard. You know, he's played good left tackle. Then the moment Cam Robinson comes back and he's ready, boom, he's out. It only changed in 2024 when, you know, Cam Robinson threw a hissy fit when Walker Little was back in, and yeah, the Jaguars decided to move on from him. Also, the main thing the Jaguars need on the offensive line is the interior offensive line. There's not really any building blocks there. I'd imagine Ezra Cleveland will be the left guard to start the season, but, you know, at center, Mitch Morse, and at right guard, Brandon Sheriff, who Brandon Sheriff, by the way, is a free agent. Those are a couple guys that, you know, you can definitely improve on, and not only improve, but try to find somebody that can actually be a cornerstone of your franchise. The Jaguars haven't drafted a true building block interior offensive lineman since Brandon Linder. You guys know that. So it would be nice to really invest there and go young. I mean, the Jaguars have Luke Fortner, who actually played with Cohen in Kentucky, and they also have Cooper Hodges, who just can't stay healthy on the field. At safety, this is a weird one. I mean, Andre Sisco is a free agent. They liked Antonio Johnson, but he didn't play very good last year. Darnell Savage, Daniel Thomas, Andrew Wingard. It's kind of hard sometimes to evaluate the defense just because everybody regressed. So was it a Ryan Nielsen issue or was it a Jaguars issue? I'm not super sure. At cornerback, we have Tyson Campbell and Jarian Jones, who are 2 good starters, but I wonder if the Jaguars can really use a cornerback 1, because it feels like Tyson Campbell is more of a cornerback 2. Now, granted, is he better than that, or can he just not stay healthy? He can't stay in the lineup, unfortunately, which is not very good. And outside of that, yeah, Darby, DeAndre Prince, Monterey Brown, it was kind of a struggle watching them play sometimes last year. Linebacker, I mean, I think we're fine judging your opinion on Foye Oluokun and whether or not the new defense coordinator, Anthony Campanella, can get the most out of a Devin Lloyd, but I don't think you really need to invest a whole lot there, especially in a long-armed linebacker in a second round. Defensive line, the Jaguars need to get their edge 3. It's just ever since we let Arden Keed go after the 2022 season, the Jaguars in 2023 didn't have a third edge rusher. The Jaguars thought they had one in 2024, at least Jaguars fans did, and Travis Gibson, and they traded him away after cuts went on. So I don't know. They definitely need another edge rusher to be in the rotation. It'll help that Eric Armstead kicks inside. But yeah, interior defensive line, you always need more interior defensive linemen. I think, especially after watching the Kansas City Chiefs, man, or the Philadelphia Eagles, I should say, it'd be nice to have some playmakers there. And, like, I think every team always needs defensive linemen. I mean, typically you have 9, 10, 11 defensive linemen on your roster. So about 20% of your roster is comprised of defensive linemen, and they're always in a rotation, right? It's not like the offensive line where you have backup guards that won't get to see the field unless injury. I mean, you're cycling these linemen out in pass rush packages, run packages, all that stuff. So, yeah, with that said, I had the Jaguars' needs as some of their needs: quarterback 2, tight end 3, safety, edge 3. And I had the Jaguars' 3 biggest needs being outside wide receiver, interior offensive lineman, outside cornerback, and I guess 4 needs because I also have interior defensive line. So with that said, let's get into it, man. Jaguars free agency. Now, the Jaguars are currently 17th in available cap space at $33.7 million. And I went on Spot Track and tried to do some stuff to save us some money, but there's not a whole lot of money-saving moves the Jaguars can really make at this point. I mean, they could cut Christian Kirk. That would save the Jaguars $10 million, which might be a route they go, especially with Parker Washington. But you're also holding a $13 million dead cap hit. And you also factor in that, him and Trevor Lawrence are good buddies. So I don't know how much that factors into things, but that's just something to think about. The Jaguars, if they cut Darby, they'd save $2.5 million, $1.5 million dead. So I would imagine maybe that's the move that the Jaguars go. But, some guys that you might mention, Gabe Davis, if you cut him, $20 million of dead cap hit, so that's not happening. Foye Oluokun would be $22.2 million of dead cap, not happening. Eric Armstead, $24 million of dead cap. That ain't happening as well. So, yeah, there's not a whole lot of really big money-saving moves the Jaguars can make. So, with that said, Jaguars in free agency, I think the big thing that they do is I think they go out to the best guard prospect. I think they find someone that can, because Brandon Sheriff is getting older. He's okay in pass protection, but he just can't push players. I mean, he's not the player that he used to be. So, I think it's time to once again recycle another highly paid guard. As you guys know, we went from Zane Beadles to Andrew Norwell to now Brandon Sheriff, and it's time to get our next guy, right? So the Jaguars, I think, will get Trey Smith, guard out of Kansas City. He's a second best free agent available per PFF, and he'll probably make about $20+ million per year. So I think that's especially with Liam Cohen, he wants to build the trenches, and there's no real good guard prospect or interior offensive line prospect that would be worth it at number 5. So I think it could be a little bit risky waiting until the second or third round to find somebody. Even though I do think that there'll be good guys there, but will they be a day one starter? I don't know. So with that said, Trey Smith, I think, will be a guard because the Jaguars need a center and guard. So get one in free agency, get the best one you can in free agency, then see how the board falls to you in the NFL draft. Some other guys the Jaguars could look at: Will Fries in Indianapolis, Tevin Jenkins for the Chicago Bears, Kevin Zeitler is a guy who is a little bit older for the Lions, but maybe they look at that. And Mekhi Becton had a pretty good year this year with the Eagles moving to guard. Now, maybe he moves back out to tackle now that he's kind of had a refresh over there. We'll just have to see. So, Jaguars' next need I think they address in free agency is quarterback 2. Now, there are some names out there available, and it's whether you want to go young or old, right? The Jaguars, of course, they had Mac Jones last year. I don't think he really inspired a lot of people. If you want to go the older route, you can get Jacoby Brissett, Marcus Mariota, Andy Dalton, Jameis Winston, all those guys that are in their 30s. But if you want to go younger and maybe someone with more, with a little more potential, I guess you could say, and maybe a little more exciting, if Trevor Lawrence does go down, at least you get to watch a young guy. We could probably bring in, who is a free agent, Kyle Trask, who was, of course, the quarterback 2 in Tampa, formerly with Liam Cohen. So I don't know if he wants to bring him over to Jacksonville with him, but I think that could be definitely an option for the Jaguars. Zach Wilson's a guy, Trey Lance, Drew Lock. So these are some names, and also another old guy that I wrote down, Carson Wentz. I don't know if anybody is interested in that, but yeah, we'll see what the Jaguars do at quarterback 2. It's not, obviously the options aren't great, but that's what it is. It's quarterback 2. Anytime you have a quarterback 2 playing, you're probably in trouble. So yeah, the quarterback 2, I think they addressed that in free agency because I would rather have an actual experienced guy in there at quarterback as opposed to like a rookie from day 3, right? So next up, I think the Jaguars need an outside wide receiver. Now, it's kind of interesting here because the Jaguars have Brian Thomas Jr., who will be cheap for the next 4 years. So when you have a cheap wide receiver like that, you can probably afford to spend money on another guy, which is what's really, really intriguing about the Jaguars. Now, of course, everybody's going to look at T. Higgins. T. Higgins, I don't think is just going to be out there and available in free agency. I think it's going to be similar to Devontae Adams, where Green Bay Packers in 2022 knew that they were going to get rid of Devontae Adams, but they franchise tagged him. Then they traded him away for a first-round pick and a second-round pick, and then the Raiders signed him to a big money deal, right? It would probably be similar to T. Higgins. Now, I don't know if it's a first and second. Maybe it's just a first. Maybe it's a couple seconds, but I don't know if I want to give up all that. But I could be on board if the right person sells me it. Some other guys that are going to be available in free agency. I mean, there's Chris Godwin, and I mentioned him just because he came with Liam Cohen, and I've always liked Chris Godwin, but he's more of a slot receiver. A guy that I like potentially is Amari Cooper. He could be a good 1 or 2 year stopgap for the Jags. Stephon Diggs is another guy that I don't know if the situation's right with the Jaguars because he's a little bit crazy. But also DeAndre Hopkins is a guy that, hey, maybe you look into him. I don't know if he would be interested in coming to another team because perception-wise, the Jaguars are a dumpster fire, and he just came from one in Tennessee, right? So I don't know if DeAndre Hopkins will be interested in this. Some other guys, Marquise Hollywood Brown, as you guys may know him, Darius Slayton, and Keenan Allen are some other guys. So, yeah, there's some outside wide receiver options, and you might not even have to, break the bank for some of these guys. And it's just funny because, Keenan Allen could be a guy that I'm interested in. And, I would say one of Trevor Lawrence's favorite receivers has been Marvin Jones Jr., and we haven't really filled that gap, right? I mean, they tried to with Zay Jones. They tried to with Gabe Davis. It just hasn't been filled. So maybe they go with an old reliable. And I think this whole thing is like, will the Jaguars draft Arizona wide receiver McMillan? That'll be a big thing that impacts the outside wide receiver spot because, I think they need a playmaker there, and I don't think Gabe Davis should stop them from trying to make a move. So, with that said, next I have the Jaguars with defensive tackle. I think they need to get another defensive tackle in there, just another veteran in the mix. Osa Odigo's, I don't know, from the Cowboys. His name is Osa. Don't know how to pronounce his last name, but he could be an option. Now, the Jaguars have Eric Armstead, Mason Smith, Jordan Jefferson, and Devon Hamilton. So, I think that definitely add a veteran and add a youth player, in my opinion, for that spot. Now, edge, the Jaguars haven't had an edge since Arden Key, like I said earlier. So, some edges that might be available. Khalil Mack, who's 34 years old. Matt Judon is a guy that the Jaguars fans at least have explored, potentially trying to get. Chase Young, DeMarcus Lawrence, Hassan Reddick, Dante Fowler Jr. could be a guy down to bring back. Look, just find a guy, sign to a 1-year deal, and just move on, because a lot of times that's what these guys get. They get like 1 or 2 year deals, and they can come in and give you 8 sacks. I would love nothing more than to do that. And the Jaguars, for some reason, with Trent Baalke, just don't prioritize that third edge rusher spot. Now, safety. The Jaguars' safety position is a mess. The Jaguars could look at Javon Holland, although he might be too much money. Some names to look at is Justin Reed would be a guy that I would love to bring in, because the Jaguars coaching staff is young, So I think might be a wise decision to bring in like players with a lot of experience. And he comes from a two-time Super Bowl champion. Actually, maybe even three-time. I don't know if he was there the first time around, but yeah, Justin Reed brings some experience to the defense room, become a leader. He's really good at run stopping. I think he's a really good all-around safety. He'd be a guy that I would definitely be interested in. Trayvon Merrick from the Las Vegas Raiders, Justin Simmons, Julian Blackmon, or some other names to look at. So that's kind of how I would attack a free agency. The Jaguars can't afford to make some moves, but I think a lot of the cap hits come next year when it comes to like Josh Hines-Allen's deal and Trevor Lawrence's deal. So definitely got to keep playing it safe. So the NFL draft, the Jaguars hold a number 5 overall pick. The Jaguars also have the most selections in the draft of any team with 10. The Jaguars have 3 selections on day 2, and they also have 6 selections in the first 4 rounds. And the reason why the Jaguars have this kind of trade capital is because when the Jaguars traded back for number 17 and number 23 to take Brian Thomas Jr., the Jaguars got the Minnesota Vikings 3rd and 4th round picks. So that's definitely huge. So with that said, I think that some names to look at pick number 5 overall is Will Johnson, cornerback from Michigan. Like I said, I think Tyson Campbell, I mean, he's highly paid, so maybe it might be nice to bring in a guy that's kind of cheap and really bring down a true lockdown, a number 1 corner. That could be definitely intriguing. Also, Mason Graham, interior defensive lineman from Michigan. I think after watching the Eagles last night, this became a lot more intriguing to me because, man, you can go in there. If you can have a really good defensive line, you can just wreak havoc. And the Chiefs never had a chance just because the Chiefs' offensive line just could not stop the Eagles' defensive line. It was just ferocious. So, yeah, Mason Graham could definitely be an option. On day 2, I definitely want to attack interior offensive line. Maybe look at a Gray Zabel, who could be a spot day 1 starter at center for you. Also, Clay Webb, Jonah Mohim, Jared Wilson are some guys to look at potentially on day 2 to be either center or guard prospects. Safety, some more day 2 options because the Jaguars had 3 picks on day 2. Xavier Watts from Notre Dame, Sebastian Castro from Iowa, Kevin Winslow Jr. from Penn State. These are all, I think, decent options for the Jaguars at safety. And I'm not sure what kind of defense that Anthony Campanelli, what kind of personnel he's looking for, but I think there'll be some available to him. So with all that said, really the offseason plan, build the trenches. Like, I think that the Jaguars' trenches was just not good enough last year. You need to get better on the offensive line and defensive line, which on the offensive line, that's a big reason why I am signing the most expensive guard in Trey Smith, and it's the reason why I am drafting interior offensive line on day 2 of the NFL draft. Also defensive line, just keep building to that, whether you add veterans or draft. You can always get better at the defensive line. Also, get faster. The Jaguars, just need to add speed. Gabe Davis was slow. Brian Thomas Jr. was fast, and you saw the difference between those guys. I think the Jaguars' running backs are slow too. We're old. Ronald Darby is not the player that used to be a cornerback. We just need to get faster so we can be all around the field. And, just get back to being a good, disciplined football team. And I think that starts with coaching. And then once coaching, if they have the right coaches in place, then it'll trickle down to the players. So, just be innovative, be fun, be out there and having a good time and scoring points and all that stuff. So with that said, that's my offseason plan for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Would love you guys to let me know what you guys think. Also, guys, please, on your way out, drop a like. And also, guys, I'm making a lot of short form content on my Instagram and TikTok. So if you haven't already, link down in the description. I'm at UCF_Jaguar on both of those platforms. So definitely check me out, give me a follow as I help grow those platforms. And with all that said, thank you guys for watching. Shout out to BetUS for sponsoring this video, and go Jags.